Welcome to Groovy and Grails webinar series from JPassion.com. Today's topic is Grails Controller Part 1. So let's move on with the presentation. So these are the set of topics that we are going to cover. First, we will take a look at controller and actions. We have covered basic concept of controller and actions already. We're going to take a look at a bit more, and we'll talk about the scopes, and then we will see how you can pass a model and how you can select a view, and we'll also go through some renderings, and then controller interceptors, and how redirecting is being used, and data binding, how data that are being sent from the browser, from the client, are captured as parameters, and XML and JSON responses. Controllers and actions. So as we talked about before, an action in a controller can be in the form of either a method or closure. Either one should work. However, methods are preferred over closure due to various reasons. Method is considered to be more memory efficient, and it also allows the use of stateless controllers. So we'll talk about singleton scope controller. In this case, there is only one controller object. You can also override actions from subclasses, meaning you can create a subclass of your controller class, and then subclass can override these actions because these actions are in the form of methods. Methods can be intercepted with standard proxying mechanism, so it's a bit easier to do that. While if you have your actions in a form of controller, proxying is going to be more difficult because closures are basically an object, a function object, to be assigned to properties. Default URI and default action. So as we talked about before, as we have seen many cases, many examples so far, a controller has a default URI and it maps to the root URI of the controller. So if you have a book controller, and if you have a URI with just a slash and without specifying any action, it will take a default action. Same thing with here. If you have an author controller and if your URI ends with just author, then it will use the default action. So how does a default action get selected? So there are a few simple rules. If there is only one action, that is the default action. If there is an index action, then that is the default. That becomes the default action. Or you can specify default action by using this static attribute, static default action, and then you can specify the name of the action. All right, let's do our first exercise. Default URI and default action. So we're going to use again Eclipse IDE for all our exercises. So we are going to create controller 1-app Grails project, which I have already done it. And we are going to create a domain class, student domain class. So JPassion.com and student, new domain class, JPassion, student, finish. And we are going to add two fields, name and age. And then we are going to create a book domain class and author domain class. So we are creating three domain classes. So I'm going to just copy this one. And let's create a book, JPassion book domain class. JPassion book, and we are going to have a title and publish date as properties. And we're going to create the author domain class. Shin author. And we're going to just have a name of the author. Okay. All right, so we save them all. And we are going to create controllers for each of these domain classes. So I'm going to go to these domain classes. And for each of these domain classes, we are going to create controller class. And same thing for book. I'm going to select new controller. And same thing with the student. New controller student class. And we are going to run the application. I think I was running the application before, so let me just stop it. Since we have created domain classes, we have to restart. So let's run this application. All right, so the exercise in this, the things we'd like to exercise is the default actions and controllers. So for author controller, we are going to include only a single action called the only action. Okay, so we are going to, in this case, because the author controller has only one action, this only action should be the default controller when you have a default URI like this. Okay, so let's go to author controller, and we're going to replace with this. Okay, so let's run the application. So if I go, I'm going to just use this. Oops. Yeah, then it should actually invoke this action. I'm the only action. I'm the only action. And now let's modify the book controller class. At this time, book controller has two actions. One is index action. The other one is the another action. Because index action is the default in this case, it will render I'm from index action. So let's copy these two actions to book controller. Okay, and save. Remove this and save. And if I go to book action this time, it will get the it will invoke index action, and we should see I'm from index action. Okay, so let's try it, and that's what we see. Okay, and the last one is setting the default action using default action attribute. So for student controller, let's try to set the default action. So we are setting the default action to be another action. So this one should be the default action. So it should say I'm from another action. Okay, so let's try this, student. Oops. Oh, I didn't save it. Okay. Okay, now we are seeing I'm from another action, this one. Okay, all right. All right, so that's exercise 1, in which we just exercise the default URI and default action. So let's move on to the next topic. Next topic is scopes. So scopes concepts are nothing really different from the scopes concept that you see in other web application frameworks. So you can think of scopes are an object. It's a hash-like object or map object where you have a key and value pairs. Scope objects could be, there are several scope objects that are available from Grails to your controller code. They are servlet context and servlet context object and session object, request scope object and params scope object and flash scope object. So these are all examples of scope object in which you can add key value pairs and then you can access those key value pairs. So in this case, assuming the servlet context app property is set with some value, then you can access it. Okay, you can either use this bracket or you can just use a dot notation like this. So either one is fine. So we are getting app as a key value and we are getting a value of logged user from the session scope object. Here we are getting foo, the value from the request scope object. Here we are getting params, a scope object whose key is name. Flash scope is something that you have again seen in many web application frameworks. It's a temporary store to make attributes available for the request and the next request. Okay. After that, the attributes are cleared. Flash attributes are cleared. So it is useful for setting a message directly before redirecting. So we're going to actually talk about redirecting a bit more later on. Redirecting is basically asking the browser to go to another page. So that goes to another, the second page will be able to access the flash scope attributes. And after that, flash scope attributes will be cleared. So in this case, this delete method, we will actually try to get the book object. And if the book object is not available, then it will set the flash message. And then it will redirect to another action. And this list page, the action will be invoked. And then list page will be able to access this flash page. And after that, it will be cleared. All right, now we actually talk about the attributes that you can save in various types of scope object. Now, controller itself can be scoped. Okay, so controller scope can be default as a default prototype or session and singleton. Okay, so prototype is a default. What it means is that a new controller object is created for each request. So this is a bit different from servlet, regular servlet. The servlet is not thread safe because the servlet the data in the servlet are actually shared by multiple threads. In this case, for each request, because every controller object gets created, it is thread safe. Session, you can actually set the controller to be session scoped. That means it's a one controller for the user session. Okay, so the way that you can set your controller to be session scoped is saying like this: static scope session or singleton. So this is like a one single controller object for the application. Okay. All right, so let's do exercise 2. So here we're going to actually exercise servlet context, scope object, and session scope object, and things like that. And we also exercise a flash. So we are going to modify student controller. So basically, we are going to add two methods. Set controller attributes. So here we are actually setting the various types of the scope object. We are setting servlet context, and the session scope object and request and params, and then we just render this message. And then another method, we are going to access these scope object, attributes of this scope object. Okay. All right, the same thing that you have set here, and basically we are rendering those values. Okay. So let's go to student controller, and we are going to copy this code and replace. And again, whatever change you make in controller, you don't have to restart the server, restart the application. So I'm going to save, and then I'm going to go, we are basically setting these scopes attributes. So I'm going to click this one. So scope attributes are set. And then we are going to access those scope attributes. Now, when I access these scope attributes, what you can see is, let's try this one first. What you see is that you can access attributes in the servlet context and session. However, you cannot access the attributes in the request as well as params, because these are not really, it's not actually something you can access in the different request. Okay. However, if I actually go to this location from another browser, here I'm actually simulating a different user. So in this case, this different user should have his own session. So you can see it can access my app, which is the attribute in the servlet context that's supposed to be available to everyone as long as the application is up and running. However, it doesn't have its own session. I mean, this new user has his own session, so this is null because we haven't set it. Okay, so so this new browser is simulating another user, and that another user has a different session. That's why you see null here. All right, so let's move on to the next. So that's what we just did. All right, now let's talk about the flash scope. Okay, so here we are going to add two new methods. So again, the first method is setting the flash. So we are setting message attribute of the flash scope object, iFlash message, and then we are going to get it. Okay, so let's copy this code and replace this student controller actions with this. Okay, and then save, and let's try to access this. We are going to access set flash message. So it's going to set the flash message. Flash message is set. Now we are going to access that flash message. So I'm going to access this flash message. Okay. So this message is available now in this request. However, if I refresh it, this is supposed to be gone because a flash message is going to be available only on the subsequent the request cycle. So if I refresh it, you can see it's null. Okay. So that's what we just have done. As I said, flash scope is typically used with the redirection. So redirection is basically, is going to the next different page, second page. Okay. So here we are going to redirect to get flash message. Basically we are just calling this one. Okay. So here we are going to redirect. Okay. Now let's actually set this one. So there's set message, get message like a 2. Okay. So we set flash message. Oh, did I save it? Okay. Get flash message 2. Oh, okay. I was actually changing the wrong value. So I want to actually change this value. Okay. All right. So refresh it. Oh, I have to go this way. Time. So flash message is set to my flash message 2. And then if I again refresh it, Oops. Let's try it again, and then I'm going to refresh it. Okay, so here, refresh it, and then if I refresh it again, it becomes null. Okay. All right, so that is exercise 2. So let's move on to the next exercise. Models and views. Again, you have seen examples of this, so nothing really new. So model is a map object that view uses when rendering, and the keys within that map correspond to variable names the view can actually use. So in this example, here we are returning a model. Okay. In this case, we are just returning. You can see this is an array. We have a single item in this array, but you can have multiple items in this array. So we are basically sending a model, the map object. In this case, it just contains a single value pair, the key value pair, and the key is a book. And this book can be used in the view. So that's what this view code is all about. Okay. So here we are getting a book object based on title coming from the as a request parameter, and then we are returning this model map object, which contains a single item whose key is book, and that is being used right here. Okay. So again, we have seen this example multiple times. You can return a model implicitly. So if the no explicit model is returned, then controller's properties are going to be used. Controller's properties are going to be used as model implicitly. Okay. So in this case, since the list is not really sending anything, it's going to in this case, these books and others properties are going to be available as model objects in the view. So basically, array of these books and authors, that's gonna actually construct a map object. Okay. Use this only one controller. Controller is in prototype scope, and new instance of controller gets created per request. Because we are actually sending this guy as a model object, you want to actually make sure those model objects are actually kind of different per each request. All right, returning a model and view object. So Spring, again, the Grails is using Spring framework underneath. You can actually construct model and view object. So here, this is the view, and this is the model object. Again, we have just a single item in this array. Okay, so you can certainly create model and view object and then return. Selecting a view, so we have seen examples of selecting a view through implicit view selection. So implicitly, Grails will select a view with the same name of the action. If you want a different view other than the name of the action, then you can use a random method with a view argument. So here in this case, we have a show action, and as a default, it will select show.gsp as a view. However, if you want to select a different view, then you can use a render, and then you can specify the view. In this case, it will try to get display.gsp file. You can also actually specify more the subdirectory complete path like this. In this case, it will try to find shared display.gsp file. So in this case, it will try to find views and book and display GSP. In this case, the views. So since it's actually full path, it will actually try to find from here. Okay, so it doesn't even have include book. If it is relative, if we actually set this one relative, so we have root here, right? So in that case, it will, it will have book as well. Okay, so let's do exercise 3. So here we are going to create book. We are going to actually create the 2 books with a title of good book and bad book, and then we save those 2 books. And then we are going to call show book. In this case, it's going to find a book whose title is good book, and then that's what we are going to return. And then we create the showbook.gsp file, which just display the the title and publish date of this good book. Okay, and then this is what we are going to see. So let's change book controller, and let's copy these two methods. And save it. And if I go to create books, it will have two books have been created. Okay, and then if I go over here, show book, it will have 4 because we do not have showbook.jsp file. So we are going to create showbook.jsp file on the views here. So views and book, new. We'll just create a file and name it as showbook.jsp. And we are going to copy this code. Next webinar, we are going to cover the GSP in more detail. Okay, so it's saved. So this is the model object that was returned from the control action, and we are basically displaying title and published page. Okay, so we go over here, and then we are going to see the title is good book and published date is this. Okay. All right, now next exercise is actually using model and view object. You have to import this class Spring Framework.web.servlet.model and view. Okay, so let's try to add this method to book controller. Okay, and we have to import this class model and view. All right, we save it. Now we are going to call the show book. So the oh, actually, I want to actually invoke this one, not this one. Okay, so we'll try that. And it should actually return the same value. Okay, all right. Okay, okay, so we just see that worked. Okay, selecting a view. So here we are going to select show book. Oh, so instead of selecting, so we are just changing the show book here. Okay, so we are going to change code. So instead of this, instead of using default view of show book, we are going to actually use the same view. So it is actually the same thing as not using this view attribute. Okay, view selection, explicit view selection. And yeah, it should actually work the same. So that is this one. Okay, all right, that worked. So that's now this time I'm going to actually choose different value. So if I say display book, I'm actually messing up with the insert. Okay. Okay. And now if I try to access this page, it will have a 4.4 error. Okay. Oh, looks like I have no signature method. Yeah, it looks like I actually code this might be a little bit. I'm gonna just copy this code. Show book. Yeah, so it's actually looking for this playbook.jsp file. Okay. Same thing, if I say shared this playbook and refresh, then see. Yeah, so it's now looking for views shared that display that JSP file. If you use the relative path like this, then you should have after views you should have a book. Okay, like this. Okay, so we exercise the view selection, and let's just change this one to working one. So show book, then things should work. Okay. All right, so that worked. So that is exercise 3. So now let's move on to the next topic, which is rendering. So again, we have seen examples of rendering before, so nothing really different. We have seen example of rendering a text. You can actually render the XML like this. So this is a text, but content type is text XML. Okay. We are going to see other way of actually rendering an object in the form of XML or JSON, but you can just kind of use this scheme, which is probably not recommended. This is a lot more difficult, to construct this text like this. Okay? But it's possible. Rendering with a view, other examples of rendering. So we have seen example of selecting a particular view in previous the topic, and you can actually render some markup. Okay, so here, this is something we're going to cover again in XML. So here, as a default, is going to so it's going to actually create the So div is basically creating an XML element. Okay, so it's actually creating for all the books. It's going to create an element of div with the ID and title. You can also specify a template, and then here, this collection is going to be using this template. Okay. So let's do exercise 4. So we're going to do very simple rendering. So here we are going to render text code here. We are basically rendering this one as a text XML. So when this one is returned, the browser will actually, display as an XML file like this. Okay. So that is, let's add this one, save it, and if we go over here, oops. And the text, this is a book. Yeah, that is right. Oh yeah, here we go. Okay, so it worked. So maybe I didn't save the changes. All right, the next one is a markup. So here we are going to display books in the form of the dev element. So here, let's just change this one to with this code. Okay, so save the change. Then if I click this one, oops. So this is what you're going to see. And if you take a look at the source, you can see this is actually with a div. Okay, so that's what you see right here. Okay, so let's move on to interceptors. Controller interceptors. So controller interceptors are interceptors that are used for the actions. So it's nothing really different from the interceptor concept that you have seen in other frameworks. So there are two different types of interceptors, before and after. And however, there is another interceptor-like things in Grails. That's a filter. So if your interceptor is likely to apply more than one controller, then it is recommended that you create a filter. So you can actually learn the filter in controller 2 presentation. So filters can be applied to multiple controllers or URIs without needing to change the logic of each controller. Controller interceptors is per controller. So in order to create before interceptor, basically you say in your controller, you say diff before interceptor, and then you're going to provide a controller object. Okay, so and this is after interceptor. Here you can, this before interceptor defines an interceptor that is used for all actions except the login action and execute in author and it executes. So basically, except login, you are going to execute this auth as interceptor. Okay, and login except this. Okay, so you have other methods, methods in your controller. All those methods will actually execute this auth method first as a before interceptor. After interceptor could actually have an access to a model. Okay, so after interceptor takes the resulting model as an argument, can hence manipulate the model or responses. You know, this model object could be actually changed. Okay. So this is an example where you can actually receive model and view object. Okay, again, you can do whatever you want with it. Okay, before sending those objects to the view. So this is typically used as in after intercept, the after execution of an action as in after interceptor. Interceptor conditions, we have actually seen examples of this already. This is with the except and this is only. So meaning this one is going to be, this interceptor will be executed only for only secure action. All right, so we're going to do very simple controller intercept exercise. So here we're going to just print things out. You know, this is a before interceptor and this is after interceptor. And because we haven't specified the conditions, you know, they will be applied to all actions. Okay, so let's add these two controller interceptors to controllers. Save the change. And I'm going to just call any of these actions. So if I click this one, okay, and you can see, you know, before this, these are the, this is from before interceptor and this is from after interceptor. Okay. All right, so that is interceptor. So let's move on to redirection. So actions could be redirected using redirect controller method. So here, this is the way that you are redirecting with the this login action. So these are examples of redirection. Here you can pass parameters. Okay, so you can pass the your own custom parameter in this case. And you can just pass the parameters that you have received from the client, and you can even actually have a fragment. Okay, so fragment, and in that case it will be redirected to this. So this fragment profile will be added to here. So call the login action with the same class, and if you want to actually invoke an action in another class, that you can specify controller the attribute as well. And here you can specify the URI, or you can specify the full URI. All right, so redirection is typically used when you are actually changing some state on the server, typically when you create and save a new object instance to the database, and if user actually refresh the page, unless you are careful, unless you are using redirection, it will in fact perform, it will actually result in double submit problem. So if you perform, for example, add a record into a database, if the user refresh the page without using redirection, it will actually send the same HTTP post request, which is going to duplicate on the server side.
Okay, so that is the double submit problem. So to solve that problem, you want to redirect to another page. Another page is typically displaying things. So when a user refresh the page, it's going to just send the HTTP GET. So it's not going to have any impact to the server. So that's the reason you want to use the redirection. So this is a code. This is a save code from the generated code. So the scaffolding code. So when the user save, it performs save operation, and then it will construct a flash message, and then it will redirect to show action. Okay. So that when once it's redirected to show action, even if the user refresh that show action page multiple times, it should not have any impact to the server. If you do not redirect here, then when user refresh the page, it will actually call the save operation again. So that's causing a double the submit problem. All right, so let's do double submit problem. So we are going to create the brand new domain class, new domain class, and we're going to call it teacher. And then we're going to perform generate all against the teacher domain class. Okay, so we are going to say new and generate controller and views on this teacher. Okay, and we are going to take a look at the code. Okay, by the way, if you want to actually see, I'm going to just add this before interceptor to the teacher controller so that I know which methods are being invoked when you actually save it or refresh it. So I'll copy it. Okay, so we're going to go to teacher controller class, and we are going to add this interceptor. Okay, and we save it. Now, if you take a look at and then we have to restart the server because we just added a brand new domain. So I'm going to stop this one, and then I'm going to start again. So we are going to actually exercise adding a new teacher using existing code. So existing code, again, if you take a look at the save, it's actually redirecting to show. Okay. So, oops, it's already used. Okay, I thought I actually stopped it. Okay, and we're going to use this. Oh, what is going on? We stopped it. So there is nothing, everything is terminated. So So we're going to take a look at this code. Yeah, I mean, this is a code, from the generated code. Okay. All right, good. So we're going to create the teacher. Okay. And so let's create the teacher. And I'm going to go over here. And so, it actually invoked the index and list. And then we're going to create a new teacher. So you can see the, oh, looks like my domain class has not been, oh, looks like I haven't added anything to the domain class. Oh, okay. So we have to regenerate the code. My apology. Okay, so domain class. Yeah, we are going to have name and age. Okay, I'm gonna just yeah. So this one is just to have an order, and now we have to regenerate the code because we have. So let me actually stop the server first, and we are gonna generate controllers and views. Finish, and it's going to ask me whether I want to overwrite the existing code, which I will say yes. Okay, so I here say, okay, so the code has been generated. Okay, so now we're going to actually go to teacher controller, and again we are going to add this interceptor so that we can see what's going on. Save all the changes, and then we are going to yeah, so basically now we are going to restart the server, and we're going to actually play around with actually adding a teacher. And so let's run the code. Everything's terminated. Okay, so we are going to controller. So whenever you are creating a new teacher, in this case, it's going to call create and then save. Okay, and then it will redirect to show. Actually, it's redirected to list. Okay, so let's try to create teacher. So if I try to create a new teacher, so it calls the create. Create will actually display this page. Okay, so I'm gonna age is 1. I'll say Sang Shin. Okay, and create. Now, what it does is that it does, the create is actually called to display the, where you can actually enter values. And then once you submit, it will call save, and then it's going to be redirected to show. So at this point, if I refresh this page, it will not have an impact to the server. It will not call a save again because it has been redirected. So there is no double submit problem. Okay. Now, let's actually generate the double submit problem. Okay. All right, so let's generate the double submit problem. So again, if you take a look at the DB console, okay, you can actually see on your single record. So let's take a look at the DB console. So here, I'm gonna go to DB console. And if I see a teacher instance, teacher here, there should be only one teacher, okay? Even if I, refresh the page, the multiple times, okay? All right. Now, what we want to do next is, instead of redirecting, we are going to just render this page, the same page, the create, okay? So basically, we are not redirecting it, okay? So this is basically causing double submit problem, okay? So let's go to teacher controller code. So in this case, for save operation, instead of redirecting, I'm going to render create, meaning I'm actually, displaying the create page again, or save page again, okay? So in this case, let's save it, okay? Now let's try to create a new teacher. So we are going to actually go back to we're going to go the yeah, actually I'm going to just type it, localhost 8088 controller 1 app. So now let's try to create a teacher. Okay, so again, it will actually, I'm going to just clear this guy. Okay, now let's try to create a brand new teacher. So age 3, and I call it new teacher. Okay, like this. So it creates a new teacher by calling create and save. Now if I refresh it, okay, it's creating. So you probably have seen this message multiple times. The page you are looking for use the information, blah, 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 blah. If you say continue, then you are going to see the teacher is, the next teacher, another teacher is created. Okay, if you refresh again, it will create another one. So this is a double submit problem. So you can see, it's actually calling that page. It's going to actually sending the request to the server multiple times. So if I actually go to the DB console, you probably see multiple instances of new teacher. So like this. Okay, so this is the double submit problem. Okay, all right. Yeah, I was actually expecting that, when I refresh it, it actually calls this method again, but I don't know why it doesn't. Take a look at that. I have to take a look at that. Okay, so that is the double submit problem, and that's the reason that you want to use the redirection. All right, so let's move on to data binding. So data binding is, oh, my apology. Data binding is an act of binding incoming request parameters to the properties of an object, your domain object, or entire graph or path. Okay. When the data binding is being performed, type conversion occurs because the data that are coming from the client, from the browser, they are all string type. However, the objects, reflecting the properties of the object, domain object reflecting those parameters are not the string type, so that type conversion gets automatically performed. Okay, so this is an example. Oops. My apologies. Somehow I think I actually have incorrectly created these double column things. Okay, so we just talked about that. So here, when you actually, creating a new book from the params, that's the time the data binding occurs. And at this point, if there is a type conversion error should actually occur. They occur. Okay. The action argument. So yeah, again, I have actually some code below. I apologize again. So I'll actually explain this one using the code. Okay. So again, this is rather difficult to see. I'm going to actually use the sample code to explain it. Type conversion errors. All right, so I'm going to actually use the that documentation. Exercise, we're going to actually go to exercise 7. Okay. So what we can do is that, you can certainly receive whatever user has passed as a params. Okay. So here we create a brand new method called the show book with params, and we are actually using the title that comes from the client to find a book. Okay. Here, this is actually using argument. Whatever the type, whatever field of that params, if you actually receive it as an action argument, you can receive them as an action argument. So I'm actually receiving params title value as a title. So here you can actually use just a title instead of the params title like this. So you can either use params.title like this, or you can receive them as an argument. Okay. All right. So let's actually add these two methods to book controller. Book controller I want to use. Okay, save the change. Now I'm actually calling show book with params. So I'm calling this method, okay, and then I'm passing good book. Okay. Oh, by the way, I have to actually create the I have to create books first. Okay. Oh, which I have already done it. Oh, but since we have restart the server, we have to actually call this one first. Okay. So let's actually go over here, and then I'm gonna just change it, create books. Yeah, so books. Yeah, Here we go. So two books have been created, good book and bad book. Okay, and then I'm going to call this. So I'm passing title as a good book. Okay, so if I click this one, it performs the find by title, a dynamic finder, and then display it. Okay. Same thing with this. This time I'm passing the same thing, but I'm actually using a different method, which is basically using this guy. Okay, so I'm actually receiving title as an argument. Okay, so again, you should actually have the same result. Okay, all right. So this time I'm actually receiving bad book. Okay, so I'm sending bad book here. Type error conversion. So whenever the data binding occurs, type error could actually happen. So I'm going to add another method. So in this case, basically I'm creating a new book, and in this time, I'm actually sending publish date, another property of a book, and instead of the valid the date, I'm sending invalid date. Okay, like this, and that should actually invoke this error condition. So when data binding occurs, the type error conversion could have occurred, and then it will just display this message. Okay, so let me just add this code. I'll just add any place here. Okay, save, and then let's call this guy, and you can see value XX is not a valid the date. Okay, so you can see I'm actually sending this XXX. Okay. All right, so that is that. Now let's move on to the last topic, which is the XML and JSON responses. All right, so you can actually render with a content type like this. Okay, and again, for all the books, you can actually display. It will actually display like this. And you can use render method. So yeah, this is the case. I'm actually setting the content type of JSON instead of XML, and this is what gets returned, JSON object. You can actually do XML marshal. So you can say render book list as XML, and then it will just create an XML file like this. And same thing with the JSON. Right, so let's do our last exercise. Okay, so we are going to add two new methods to the book. So this is rendering as an XML, this is rendering as JSON. So you basically specify the content type. Okay, this one as a JSON, this one as an XML. Okay, so let's add these two methods. Save the change, and then we're going to go render XML, and it actually returned two books in the XML format. And if I click this one, now we are calling the we are getting it as an JSON. So this is the JSON object. Okay, and the next one is we are going to actually marshal. So we are going to add the these two method, and we have to add an import statement, and we have to import Grails converters. Okay, let's add this guy, save the change. Now if I call this guy, basically the marshal as an XML, okay, then you can see it returns in the XML format. And if I click this one, it returns as JSON. All right, so that is the end of the presentation, and our time is up.